I've had the real privilege of speaking to not one, but two local stars who've both found fame as part of Game of Thrones. And I love Game of Thrones, so I was very excited for both. Lyanna Mormont herself, Bella Ramsey, was on talking about her new film Resistance, while Tom Hopper was telling me all about the second season of Umbrella Academy on Netflix. But I fancied a hat-trick of Westeros alumni, and this is a big one. Described by my mate Sam as the best character in the entire show. It's only Bronn. Yes, I've been speaking to Jerome Flynn of Robson and Jerome. We talk Game of Thrones, of course, but what he was actually on to talk about is a new documentary which aims to highlight the issue of animal cruelty in large farms, which supply food to some of our biggest supermarkets. It's called Hogwood, a modern horror story, and it focuses on the farm of the same name and is narrated by Jerome. We had a chat both from our own homes about what you can expect from the documentary.
It's the result of several years' work by the wonderful campaigning group Viva, who I've been associated with closely for many years. And I know Juliet, their founder and leader, very well. She's a wonderfully passionate lady who cares most of all about the welfare of our animals. And they've been very instigative over the years about raising awareness. And I think it was Viva's work, that and Peter, that first drew me to start to understand the horrors of intensive farming that was bringing food to my plate and helped to wake me up to the truth of what's going on and what happens when you make the desperate mistake of mixing animal welfare and food with profit. So yes, it's part of what inspired me to become vegetarian and now vegan. But the main message at the heart of this film is that we are being deceived, basically, into thinking that there are decent animal welfare standards being kept. And there's a label of assurance, supposedly, called Red Tractor in this case, which was dreamt up by the Farmers Union. I know very full well that many of my farming friends would not condone the practices that are taking place in this film. So this doesn't represent the mind and hearts of most of the farmers that I meet, but I'm in a smaller rural situation that doesn't involve intensive farming where I live. But the Farmers Union cooked this up, called Red Tractor, and it's supposed to ensure animal welfare standards, to make you feel that the meat you're buying comes from a good place. And what the documentary reveals is that is far from the truth. Because what's going on in Hogwood Farm was just unspeakable. I mean, it's the most upsetting film I've ever seen, and it's not on its own. That's the thing. But the government haven't taken any action against Red Tractor. So in a way, they're condoning these conditions. I mean, you've got pigs that are eating themselves alive, and that's on camera. You've got the people who are supposed to be looking after the animals beating sick and injured animals in the corridors, and corpses being thrown out onto the concrete and left there to rot, with animals that will never see the light of day and will never know what it is like to feel the joy of being alive, which for me is the birthright of every of our fellow living creatures on this planet.
When I heard the name Hogwood Farm and put your name to it, it sounds quite nice, doesn't it, Hogwood Farm? I thought maybe you were starring in a new family film, maybe even getting into a bit of fantasy again. I don't think I could have been any more wrong. I mean, you've touched upon some of the horrendous things we see in this film. How important was it for you that the film doesn't shy away from showing some of the atrocities?
Well, it's everything to me, because so much of it is down to education. We are led to believe that there's this kind of idyllic farm culture scene of animals frolicking freely in the fields. And we've had that truth kept from us for such a long time. But as with many other parts of our society, the truth is coming to light. The light is being shone. And this documentary, in terms of animal welfare, and also in terms of the environmental impact of animal agriculture worldwide, the desperately catastrophic ledge that we are sitting on in terms of the ecocide that we are causing because of animal agriculture. This film is shining a light on that, and it's asking us to take action ourselves with every choice we make. Because at the moment, it seems clear that the people that least likely You know, our leaders who are supposed to be looking after our health and our environment and our welfare and our animals' welfare, they're the ones that are least likely and most resistant to the change. But you feel that, you know, ironically, that the COVID crisis that we've been in and the lockdown has afforded us some time to sit back and think and to digest what's really going on in our culture, in this life-destructive culture that we're in. And there's a rising up going on in so many areas in terms of the inequality towards our own people and towards our animals. So that's the good news. And this film is part of that. And that's why it's so important that we do see the truth, because the wool has been kept firmly over our eyes for far too long.
It was quite nice then. There were some birds tweeting in the background as you were talking about making sure we protect our nature and our welfare. It was almost like Mother Nature was saying thank you to you. It was lovely. With this film, what I found so interesting watching this film, because you watch this kind of footage and it is shocking, and I sort of can't overplay that, but you sort of watch this and you go, why aren't they doing anything? They're just filming. And so what's interesting about this is that the people involved, the undercover investigators, actually take a step back and decide that it's not worth it to film. They have to take action and sort of stop halfway through. How was it for them, working with them closely as the narrator and the presenter of this film? How were they with this when they came out of this?
Well, it's Lord knows, it's not something... It's hard enough watching the footage. So to be there on hand, witnessing this desperate cruelty and suffering of these creatures which you love, it's desperately upsetting. But this is it. But we have to have our hearts broken open. But yeah, how did Juliet and the team manage to do that? Through passion, through the passion of wanting to get the truth out so that suffering can come to an end. But in a sense, I think once you get to the point that they have when we know what we do, it's almost more painful to walk away and ignore it. So upsetting as it may be, there's a passion at the heart of it, and a conviction that we ain't gonna stop until we're living in a world where this sort of suffering is not happening.
More to come from Jerome, including Game of Thrones chat. After this from Regard. Before Regard, I was talking to Jerome Flynn about his documentary about the terrors of farm animal cruelty. But since I was talking to Bron, I had to do it. Have to ask you about Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Yep.
Biggest show in the world. I mean, how incredible was it to be a part of?
Well, obviously, because we didn't know what an incredible show it was when we started, there was a slow burn. Well, it's a slow burn that turned into, after a couple of seasons, it became obvious that we were involved in something special. But once you're in it, it becomes your life, and it becomes, in a sense, the normal. Even though every year I was so grateful to go back and didn't really expect Bron to make it through to the end. But I loved it. I mean, and apart from it being as an actor, a wonderful experience, and Bron was a beautiful character to play, it's also special to me because it actually means that, I probably wouldn't be having this conversation with you and able to bring this awareness if I hadn't been in Game of Thrones. So it brings that, for me personally, it helps to make sense of some of the vacuousness of fame, to put it to some use. But it's a special 8-9 years of my life, and the show remains. It works in many ways, and we're drawn to it for many reasons, because it appeals to us in terms of our human condition and our history. But there's also a very profound underlying subconscious allegory in there, which is also very pertinent to our times, which is that there is this threat coming that is threatening to wipe out humanity. And all these warring factions and these competing families and this grabbing for power, they have to come together. People have to collaborate and come together in order to save the world. And we are in that position now. That's the reality of it. And how we treat our animals and use our land is crucial to that solution of creating a world that we actually long for, a beautiful world that can where equality for all living beings is a reality.
My friend, when I basically showed off that I was going to get to interview you, a friend of mine said that Bron was the best character in any show ever. So, first of all, congratulations on that. It's not an official award, but my mate Sam thinks it, and struggle to disagree with him. Do you miss? I know obviously it had to come to an end at some point, but do you miss Bronn as a character and getting to be him?
Oh yeah, I do actually, because he was just such a delight to play. And the fact that he was, he had the light and the dark in there, and that wonderful sardonic northern sense of humour. I mean, that was the thing, is I could go into work and I always knew that I was going to have some wonderful lines to deliver. He got the best lines, and Dan and David were so good. And I think, amidst so much horror of what was some of the darkness and the violence and the upsetting stuff, Bronn's sense of humour was crucial, which is why they made sure they got that sense of humour in every scene. So yeah, I'll never have another part quite like that, and I do miss him, but I allow him to come out now and then.
Jerome, thank you so much for your time. Hogwood, A Modern Horror Story is available now. Where can people get more information?
I'm just going to reiterate a couple of things that people, to encourage people not only to watch the film, which you'll find on Amazon Prime and Apple Play and Google Play, but also to spread it as far and wide as you can. There's a petition on viva.org to Boris Johnson to end the horror of factory farming. And there's also loads of information on viva.org of ways to comfortably cut down on the amount of meat you're eating, and also to cut it out completely, so that you end up happy about the choices you're making with the food that goes on your plate, and healthier with it. So we're just encouraging everybody to go there and take action, because at the moment, sadly, our choices are the ones that are really making a difference in the industry.
Jerome Flynn there. The documentary he's talking about is Hogwood, A Modern Horror Story. I recommend to go and watch it, but not because it's an enjoyable watch. It's certainly not, but it's very powerful and may make you have a proper think about that kind of thing. It's available on all your streaming services. BBC.